You're listening to the Cryptid Creature Show. If you're a fan of the show, go and check out our new Patreon site. You'll get access to our private Discord server, exclusive merchandise, access to all live streams and Q&As, discounts on merch from the Cryptid Creature store, and get a chance to be a guest host during one of the show's recordings. Just go to patreon.com/Cryptid Creatures. Thank you for listening and supporting the show.
This is the Cryptid Creature Show. I am Brian, and with me, as always, is my co-host Todd. What's up, buddy?
Brian, tonight's guest is coming from the good old state of Oregon.
Oregon, one of our favorite places.
Bringing on Joey tonight, and Joey had a couple Bigfoot encounters there in Oregon.
Not hard to believe.
No, it's not. So we'll bring Joey on and talk to him about his exciting encounters and see what he saw and what he could describe for us. Are you ready to bring him on, sir?
Yep, let's get him.
Joey, thanks for being on the show with us tonight. We appreciate it, man.
Glad to be here. Nice to see you guys.
Yeah, man, it's our pleasure. Thank you.
We know you had a couple Bigfoot encounters back in the day in Oregon. Is that where you live now?
Yeah, I lived in Oregon all my life. That's right.
So you want to take us into the first encounter?
Yeah, I want to go back a little farther and include an encounter. I'm going to call it an encounter because I truly believe that's what it was. My sister, who's 6 years older than me, she's actually the one who saw the hairy man the night that this happened. But I'll briefly start there. I was about 10 years old, so it's about 1970. My mom and dad took my sister and I camping into Eastern Oregon at a place called Delintment Lake. It's east of Prineville, maybe an hour and a half. Way up in it was pretty remote back then. It was just a gravel road access to Delintment Lake. We had been camping at Walton Lake, which is in the Ochocos, and had no luck fishing. So my dad wanted to move. He couldn't stand not catching any fish. So anyway, we headed to Delintment Lake. We got to the campground, primitive campground. There was picnic tables and fire rings, but outhouses, no electric hookups or anything. And we were the only ones in the campground. Which I thought was great. I had my run of the whole place. My sister was, the day we got there, was trying to learn crochet from my mom. So that's what they were doing. And my dad, he was a ham radio fanatic, and he was busy setting up his ham radio station, which was also very cool. He'd let me help him with that and putting up the antenna and all that. Anyway, we had dinner and had a big fire going. Clear sky, summer, so it was no rain or anything. Clear skies, calm, as I remember. And my sister and I got ready and went to bed in our pup tent. It was an Army issue pup tent. And my mom and dad, they slept in. We had an old Ford F-100 with a canopy on it, and he had made it into a camper, so to speak. And my mom and dad slept in there. It was pretty close to the tent, but anyway, my sister and I got in our tent, and they went to bed, and we all said goodnight. My dad had built up the fire. He did this every time we camped. He'd build it up so there was some flame in the fire. When we went to bed, I was a little afraid of the dark back then, and it was reassuring to see that fire glow. So we're in our tent, laying next to each other, my sister and I, talking back and forth, getting ready to go to sleep. And there was deer around the camp all day long, not right in our campground. We could see deer, and they were fairly tame, back then. It wasn't hunting season or anything, so they had no reason to fear us, and we were the only ones there. So we saw deer during the day, and we're laying there, and I hear something walking near our camp, which I'm assuming is a deer. And so my sister was telling me to be quiet, and I did, and we were both laying there quietly. I'm laying on my back with my sister to the right of me, and I'm left-handed. So I'm laying on my back. My left hand arm is nearest the tent wall. And whatever this is walks right by our tent. and stops right outside our tent. And if I can, I remember maybe hearing it breathe, but definitely noticed that it had stopped and maybe it brushed against our tent a little bit. And so I was still assuming it was a deer. And so with my left hand, my fist, I hit the side of the tent real hard to scare it away. And when I did that, my hand hit whatever it was standing there with a big thud, whack. And it didn't run off. It just started walking again a little bit. And so my sister got up to look out the screen of the tent, opened up the flaps to look out the screen of the tent to see if it was a deer or an elk or whatever, and just started screaming and calling for my dad. She had her arms holding the tent door open, and she's screaming, "Dad, Dad, Dad," screaming. And I can't see past her. I was kind of like, why would she be screaming about a deer? And so I hear the canopy door open to the truck, and my dad, the tailgate plopped down real loud. And he comes running over and opens up the tent. My sister's crying. And the first thing he says, "What's going on?" And the first thing she says is, "There's a hairy man by the fire." And I remember my dad laughing, "A hairy man, you know?" And I was kind of like, what? I didn't believe her either. And then she continued to explain that there was a hairy man standing by our fire, and when she screamed, it ran off. So Dad got us both up out of the tent, and we were standing by the fire, and he's looking around a little bit. He had a big, one of those big 6-volt old-fashioned lantern-style flashlights. He was shining it all around into the woods and across the campground. We didn't see anything. My sister was very upset, and from the campfire went into the truck with my mom, was telling her what she saw. And my dad kept milling around. I was on his coattails while he continued to check out the campground. So that night, we all settled down finally, and my sister slept in the canopy with my mom and dad. She didn't want to go back in the tent. And my dad got my sleeping bag and put it on the bench seat of the truck, and I slept in the front of the truck that night. So I get up in the morning, and the first thing I see is my dad taking our tent down. And the next thing I notice is he's got his Colt. He had I don't know if it was Army issue, but his favorite pistol, this Colt 45, an ivory handle, in his holster on his hip. And I remember when I saw it thinking, that's the first time I've ever seen my dad open carry during a camping trip. But he had his pistol on his hip, and I got out of the truck, and he had something for me to eat there on the picnic table. It was actually the s'mores that we were going to make. But they weren't made. So I had chocolate bar and graham cracker and marshmallows for breakfast. He packed everything up, and we hightailed out of there and went back to Walton Lake, which was full of people. And the fishing was no good, but we finished our camping trip there. Never talked about it really anymore. You know, I was 10 years old. All I was thankful for was that I was safe. And my sister, I don't remember her talking about much about it. But when I recalled this story to her, she's 70 now. She really doesn't remember much about that. She does remember being upset and calling for Dad, but she can't describe what she saw. But her words were, "There's a hairy man, not a bear, and there are black bear over there. Definitely not a deer. Just a hairy man standing by the fire." So my dad's reaction to that is what was really kind of alarming to me when I think back and how he reacted. And he loved Delintment Lake. I mean, we were the only ones there. I'm sure the fishing would have been better than where we were. But for that reason, I believe he didn't want to stay.
Do you think he knew that it was a Bigfoot, or do you think maybe he thought just some kind of homeless guy running around, peeking around your tent?
Yeah, that could have been too, right? But the chances of that happening at that location, a homeless person, just didn't seem logical. I mean, back then I didn't even think about that being a possibility. But well, I can't really say that. Dad had always warned me whenever we went downtown, there was an area in downtown Salem that he kind of avoided because there were, even back then, homeless and some alcoholics living on the streets back then. And he had always warned me to be wary when we were in that part of town. So I was kind of thinking of that on those terms, but never really. And he passed in 1973, just 3 years later. So I never really got a chance to talk to him about it. But, and who knows if he ever had experiences, Bigfoot encounters, because he was a Forest Service. He worked for Forest Service, was a radio tech for all the lookouts up there, and rode around the backcountry. We lived in John Day, and then was an avid hunter. Was always out deer hunting for a month every fall, So who knows if he did or didn't, but it wasn't something that we ever discussed, him and I personally.
I guarantee he knew then for sure, especially.
Yeah, he's working for the Forest Service.
Yeah, and your sister told your mom, then your mom probably told him, and he's probably like, "We're out of here," So.
Yeah, being 10 years old, it might have been something he didn't want to, discuss with me or put any fear in me. Like I said, we'd go camping and I'd wander off and, keep camp within sight. But I was freewheeling back then. I don't think he wanted to take that away from me with fear of something unknown. But yeah, I'm sure he had a story or two that I'll never know.
Why don't you take us into your next encounter then?
Sure. And after that, I really didn't think about Bigfoot, kept backpacking and camping. And I did my first solo backpack when I was 17 or 18, just an overnighter. And I remember doing that, not thinking about Bigfoot being a problem. I was way more afraid of black bears and cougars in Oregon. Not that I had any right to be, but I had heard stories, and that was my main concern back then, not running into Bigfoot. So, 1979 on Labor Day weekend, end of the summer. My friend David and I was 19, he was 17. We went. He accompanied me to a church camp that my church put on every year called Family Camp at the YMCA complex at Silver Creek Falls State Park. It starts on a Friday night and goes through Monday every year up there. Still does. Unfortunately, that year I had to work Friday night. And so Dave and I went up Saturday morning to join everybody, which we did. And when we got there, our pastor, he informed us that all of the cabins that were in the main area where everyone was staying were occupied. And there was no one, sadly, there with any room to adopt us. We wanted to stay together. So he offered us access to one of the cabins in the hillside unit, which was a few hundred yards away from the community hall where everybody met to eat and worship and celebrate every day anyhow. So that was fine with us. We kind of thought that was cool. So we made our way over to the hillside unit. I had a 71 Subaru station wagon. So one of the first Subarus to ever hit the streets. My dad bought it, and that was my first car. So Dave and I went over to the hillside unit and walked about halfway up the hill, picked out a cabin. It was an open screen cabin. They were hard wall halfway up the sides, and then there was a screen enclosure all the way around the cabin so you could see out. There were winter they'd winterized it every year, but in the summer they just left them open, screens open, and there were built-in plywood bunk beds in the cabins. So Dave and I picked a cabin out and went in, and we chose a top bunk across from each other in the middle of the cabin, put our bedrolls out, and got situated, and then went back to the main area to be with everyone and had dinner with everyone, and had worship and singing, and had a game. We had a great time. So we made our way back to our cabin about 10 or 10:30, 11. Went in the cabin, and Dave and I like to play cards, so we got our deck of cards out and sat down on the floor, and we're playing cards for an hour, hour and a half maybe. It was probably midnight before we got in our bunks and went to sleep, talked for a little bit, and dozed off. Very nice, typical, Indian summer night. No rain, very quiet, I remember. Not cold, really. So we go to sleep, and I wake up right at first light, laying on my back, wondering why I'm awake. It's barely light out. So it was maybe 5 in the morning, 4:35 in the morning. And I'm laying there. Everything's real quiet. I don't hear a sound, except the first sound I do hear is something hitting the roof of the cabin. It's tin roof, hitting the roof of the cabin and rolling down the roof onto the ground on Dave's side of the cabin. So I hear it go clink, dink, 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 down to the ground and plop onto the ground. And I'm thinking that it was probably a squirrel or a blue jay or something in the tree above our cabin working on a pine cone. I had no idea. Didn't think anything about it. I'm laying there, and a few seconds later, maybe a minute later, I hear two, what I realize now are not pine cones, they're pebbles, they're rocks. I hear one right after the other hit the roof of the cabin. The first one hits, and before it can roll very far, a second one hits, and now they're both rolling down the tin roof and falling onto the ground. And this has really got my curiosity up. And I'm starting to wonder what's going on. It didn't sound like a pine cone. Like I said, it definitely sounded like a rock. So I quietly get up out of my bunk onto the floor, and I walk over and put my arms up on the side of Dave's bunk. He's still asleep, and I'm peering out the screen on his side to see if I can see anything, because obviously whatever it is that threw these, or whoever, it came from Dave's side of the cabin. So I'm standing there, and now Dave is rustling, and he kind of wakes up a little bit and asks me what's going on. And I said, told him about the rocks. And he sits up a little bit, and we're looking out the cabin, out the screen door. And out of nowhere, from uphill to down, we hear this sizzling sound coming through the air. And it was a rock, and it hits this old growth fir tree about 30 feet out from our cabin and about 30 feet up, and it just explodes the bark on this tree. Just out of nowhere, this rock just, and it hits the tree and falls to the ground and rolls down the hill. And we're both like completely speechless about this. I don't remember Dave saying anything except sitting. He's awake now completely. And I'm really like, what is going on? And how could anything throw a rock? You could tell it was a good sized rock. We later retrieved it and weighed it when we got back to Salem. Weighed 16 pounds, just almost 16 pounds, which is like, bowling ball or a shot put, a big old damn rock. I didn't know what it weighed when I heard it and saw it hit the tree, but I knew it'd be too big for anybody to throw very far, just by the way it sounded when it hit the tree. And I remember thinking crazily, I'm trying to make sense of it, that somebody has got a catapult on top of the hill and they're chucking rocks at us with, like a pumpkin chucker kind of thing. I thought that was the only thing I could think of. And then immediately after thinking that, I was thinking, that's stupid. That who would do that? We're up here by ourselves. I had a friend there at camp named Kelly, and he was my age, kind of a practical joker kind of guy. And that was my next thought. And I think I remember telling Dave, I bet it's Kelly, but still thinking, how would my friend Kelly, he's, 100 pounds soaking wet. And so was my friend Dave, just a little guy. How would he throw a rock like that? So he jumps out of his bunk and runs out the screen door of the cabin and starts running up the hill.
Why do growing businesses love working in Slack? Let's ask Christy at RE Bikes.
Running things in Slack saves me so much time.
AI summaries save 97 minutes per week. What say you, Rox from Gosney?
Slack helps us build community, it helps us build connection.
Your partners, vendors and customers all in one place. Take us on home, Ashley from Caraway.
If we didn't have Slack tomorrow, I would explode.
Well, let's not let that happen. Visit slack.com/podcast to get 50% off Slack Business Plus.
Did my card go through?
Oh no.
Your small business depends on its internet, so switch to Verizon Business. And you could get LTE business internet starting at $39 a month when paired with select business mobile plans. That's unlimited data for unlimited business.
There we go.
Get the internet you need at the price you want. Verizon Business. Starting price for LTE business internet, 25 megabits per second unlimited data plan with select Verizon Business smartphone plan savings. Terms apply.
And above our cabin, about 100 feet, it turned into forest, fir trees and rhododendron bushes above us. And he goes running up there, hey, this and that, and goes into the woods to see if he can figure out what's going on or catch whoever's doing this. And while he's doing that, I went to the back of the cabin, which was also just screen window. And I'm peering out, watching my friend Dave go up the hill. And as he goes into the woods, just as he enters into the woods, to the right of him, behind this big rhodey bush, the rhodey bushes there are big. I mean, they're like, lack of a better term, an old growth rhododendron. So there may be, some of them are 10, 15 feet tall. This bush to the right of Dave starts moving, and I notice that it's just a little bit lighter now, but still quite dark. And from behind this bush stands this creature, the first Bigfoot I've ever seen in my lifetime. This enormous beast just stands up like out of nowhere and is facing me, and I can plainly see the outline of this thing, its head and its shoulders, and halfway down its chest, still behind the bush. And I'm frozen in awe and fear and amazement. My friend Dave is still in the forest, looking around above where the trail ends. I can't say a thing. I didn't scream or yell or anything. I just stood there staring at this thing. I don't know if it saw me or not, but like I said, I'm thinking it was about 100 feet from me, so it was fairly close. And the next thing it does is it puts its right arm, big old arm, out across the top of the bush and pushes it down enough for its right leg to swing over, and then it steps completely over the bush, and then it turns sideways, and it's very thick, very broad still, just standing there, only for a couple seconds. And then it quietly, not in a hurry or a rush or panic, it quietly took a few steps and disappeared into the woods to the right of Dave, away from my friend David. And as soon as it was back into the woods again, here comes my friend Dave trotting down the hill nonchalantly, and comes down. And as he comes around to come in the front of the cabin, I met him on the porch and put my arms on his shoulders. and told him, holy crap, dude, I just saw a Bigfoot. And he was, just real quiet about it. He said, well, I didn't see anything. I said, it was right by you as you went up there into the woods. And I told him what it did. And I said, and then it hit me because I couldn't see it any longer. And I didn't know what to think, really. I told him immediately, we need to get out of here. We need to leave. And Dave agreed that I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel safe. So we grabbed what we could, our sleeping bags and such. And I do remember just carrying my shoes. I didn't even stop to put my shoes on. And David grabbed his things and we threw it all in the Subaru and went to the community hall. And it was still too early for anyone to be there. The cooks were there already making breakfast for everybody. And we waited there for however long. The first person to come in the hall was my pastor. So now it's probably 6:30 or 6:30 maybe. It was fully light out. And we explained to the pastor what we'd seen. And, he was not in disbelief, but I remember him saying, well, thank goodness you're okay. That's great. You guys just did the right thing. You came to the community hall. You're safe. He was reassuring that you're safe now. I'm sure that was very frightening. And I remember thinking, oh, I hope he. Why would I lie to my pastor? I hope I'd gone to the church all my life. I thought he has to believe me, and of course Dave did. So after breakfast, I think maybe mid-morning, my friend David realized that he didn't have his jacket, that he'd left it there. We didn't want to go back there by ourselves, so we asked Pastor Chuck was his name. We asked him to go. He was just in his 30s, this guy. We asked him to accompany us back to the cabin to get the jacket. And we kind of wanted to look around a little bit, too, with him there. So the three of us in my car went back to the cabin. And Dave immediately found the rock, the 16-pound rock that had hit the tree. And that's the first thing we showed the pastor was where it hit the tree. And guys, it left it completely destroyed the outer bark. You could see the inner bark of the tree and about a fist-size impression on this tree. It did some damage. This rock did. And so we retrieved that rock, and my friend Dave handed it to my pastor, and he was weighing it, with his hands like, wow, that is a good-sized rock. And the other one that had rolled down the hill, we noticed that. We didn't pay much attention to that. But, and we looked around the cabin for footprint. You couldn't see any footprints. It was all that real, pine needle kind of ground cover and real dry that time of year. There wasn't any footprints. But we walked up the hill, and we stood right where the bush was that the Bigfoot was hiding behind or standing behind. And I'm explaining that to Pastor, this is where he was, and he went this way once he stepped over. And Dave's looking around while we're doing that, and then we all kind of spread out a little bit. And a minute or two later, Pastor says, hey, guys, come here. So we join him, and 10 or 15 feet back into the woods, he's standing there, and we join him there. And he's got the rock in his hand, and he says, check this out. And he takes the rock and lowers it down into the ground into a hole at his feet. And the rock that had been thrown fits perfectly into this hole. The watermark matched up on the rock, where it was a little darker, where it was sitting in, it was about half exposed. And he made the comment, Pastor made the comment, whatever extracted this rock from the ground just reached down and plucked it out. There weren't any shovel marks or like there was no problem for whatever picked this rock up to just reach down and grab it with a hand or two hands and pluck it out of there. And we're figuring that that's where because we didn't see anything until my friend Dave went up the hill. We're figuring that this thing threw that rock from where, inside the wood line there. And so it threw that thing 100 feet. I was thinking about this today. If it had to throw that rock, like a fastball, like a baseball player, a pitcher would a baseball. So how much power would it take to throw a 16-pound rock 60, 70, 80 miles an hour? I mean, it hit with such force. It was loud, guys, when it hit that tree. It was loud. I mean, it's hard to explain the sound it made, but it was solid. And it was also like it was calculated. Like whatever threw that meant to hit that tree, that exact tree. And I was talking with my friend John Reiners about this a little bit, and we're thinking more and more about, how a Bigfoot would secure food. I definitely believe that they use rocks as a hunting tool, and they're very good because, like I said, the whole time I'm there in that cabin all night, all I have separating me from that and myself is that screen. And at any time, it could have just punched a hole through that screen with his hand and grabbed me, for one thing, which it didn't. And then how cunning and premeditated to throw those pebbles onto the roof of the cabin. A bear wouldn't do that, for one thing. A person would, sure, but the intelligence, that really shook me. Because while I was sleeping we're sleeping in our bunks, anything outside the cabin, it could peer in through that screen and be 2 feet away from my face while I slept. So that was kind of creepy to think of that too. Sadly, my friend Dave, he passed way too early at just age 50. And I wish I'd have got that rock from him. But before that, I would visit him at his house, and he used it for a doorstop, and we'd talk a little bit about it. It seemed like the longer time went on, the less he wanted to talk about that. I don't know if I think he was a little envious that I got to see it and he didn't. I said, well, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have seen it. I doubt it would have come out from behind that bush. It probably thought it was time for it to move when you went into the forest like that. And I kept attending the same church, and that pastor was there he didn't retire till 2005 or 10, I believe. So, and I never talked about it with him again either. It was just an experience we had. And I went from non-believer to believer in an instant. My whole paradigm of what is in the woods changed in that instant, and it's never been the same again.
Cryptid Creatures. Hi, it's Brian. Join me and my co-host Todd as we investigate those things that go bump in the night. We'll talk to real people who have had real face-to-face encounters.
There's two of them across the creek at the big rocks.
With cryptid beings. From Bigfoot to aliens to even demons. By the end, you'll be asking, do I believe cryptid creatures?
Your pastor had to think something weird was going on. He had to know that rock got thrown. You guys saw that rock. He had to have thought something weird was going on, whether he believed it was Bigfoot or not. You think?
Yeah, I actually, pastor was transplant from Oklahoma, and I didn't ever ask him if he'd ever had an experience in Oklahoma. But again, I explained to him what I saw, exactly what I saw, that I didn't see a bear, that I saw a creature that people call Bigfoot. I remember explaining it to him that way. And that's what threw that rock at us, He's like, wow, And then he kept reminding us, well, I'm glad that he didn't throw it through into the cabin or grab you, like, okay, yeah, well, that's a bit redundant. Yeah, I'm real glad of that too. But I, like I said, I had no reason to lie to him, and definitely wanted him to go back with us to get my friend Dave's jacket. I wasn't about to go back there by myself.
That's the scary thing about these creatures. You could be walking down a trail and get just knocked dead in the head with a huge rock, and you never know what happened to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Who knows if that happens or not? It sure felt like if that was its intent that day, that it could have accomplished that easily. That little screen door on the front of the cabin didn't have a lock on it or anything. It just swung open and closed. It could have just come in and I'm sure grabbed each of us under its arm and taken off. And, a lot of people go missing. A lot of experienced hunters, and there's never any. You got to wonder. I believe that Bigfoot are temperamental and don't like to be threatened, and I also believe that in different parts of the country, in Alaska, that there are predominant traits that they portray. The Oregon forest, really, there's not a lot threatening in Oregon. Like I said, there's black bears and cougars. In Alaska, you got to deal with grizzly bears and wolves. Maybe they're a little more on edge up there. You hear a lot more horror stories about Sasquatch in Alaska than you do down in the Pacific Northwest, at least from my experience. And I'll go into my second sighting. Both of the times that I witnessed one, nothing happened to me. And I was definitely close to, especially the second one I saw, for it to do damage if it wanted to, and nothing happened. And those two sightings I've had, it didn't stop me, or I wasn't afraid to go back. I continued to camp and fish and still do, and it didn't change the way that I approach what I do out there. I didn't, I'm not packing a 12 gauge on a lanyard to keep my, I don't think it would do much good anyway, but as far as I'm concerned, they are peaceful and respectful of what we do, as long as we are of them. And they're very curious. They're very curious, and you see like Survivor Man and Todd Standing and all these guys going way out in the middle of nowhere to have encounters. Both of mine happened with there was 200 people at that family camp. We were kind of away from everybody when I saw my first one, but I'll go into my second sighting now. And again, this was in an area that, especially at the time of year that I saw it, there was people everywhere during the weekend that this happened, which was the 4th of July weekend of 1995. My birthday's on 4th of July. And for a few years before that, and including 1995, my friends and I would boat camp on an island at Detroit Lake called Piety Island. Not a very big island, maybe half mile long, quarter mile wide, right out in the middle of the lake there at Detroit Lake. You can look at Google Maps. It's kind of fun to look at Google Maps. There's photos of the boat camp there, and one of the photos is actually very similar to the site that I was occupying the night I had my second encounter. So it was on the 2nd of July that weekend that this happened. We'd been there was about 12 of us that had gone out there. We all had jet skis, and we'd tow our camping gear in our rubber boats. And it was just a blast. And we'd all set up. There was a beach area you could camp on. I had chosen a site a little farther back into the woods just to be out of the wind. And my friend Steve and his girlfriend, Nancy, were in my camp too. We each had all separate tents. Nancy and Steve sharing a tent, and I had a tent pretty close by. There's a picnic table and a fire ring there. We all partied down on the beach with everybody that night. Had a big fire going and barbecue and all that. Had a great time. Very warm day. It was 80, 90 degrees. We're all swimming and jet skiing. Anyway, later that night, Steve and Nancy and I said goodnight to everybody and made our way up to our camp. It was probably about 10 or 11 at night. Nancy and Steve didn't want to stay up any longer, so they went into their tent and to go to bed. And I wanted to wind down a little bit. So I threw a couple sticks of wood on the fire that was almost out, got it going a little bit, and got my sleeping pad out of my tent and laid it by the fire ring. And I'm laying on my side watching the flames and laying there with my friend Steve's dog. He had brought his dog Susha, big old, very big for its breed, chocolate lab. It's about 4 or 5 year old dog, beautiful dog. Loved to go camping. The only thing about this dog that was kind of a hassle was we'd go camping with her, and if there was a deer within a quarter mile, she'd catch wind of it and take off. You couldn't call her back with a T-bone steak. This dog was going to go find that deer and, bark at it for a while. And sometimes it'd be gone for an hour or two. And I always wondered, well, is this the time we're never going to see her again? Call of the wild. But she'd come back. So I had her there by me, and she's just sitting there with me quietly. And the fire is now dying down, and all that's left is some coals and pretty good stream of smoke coming up from the fire. I had the metal grate down on the fire pit. So anyway, I'm just laying there, and I hear a stick break. The first thing I hear is a stick break, and it sounded like a pretty good sized stick. Not like a twig, but like a pretty good sized stick. Big old snap, pretty loud. And Susha sits up, and I think I remember, immediately thinking, oh boy, here we go. She's going to take off after that deer. That it might be a deer, but it was sounded like a big stick. And of course, there's also maybe some elk out there, and possibly a black bear. There's bears in the area up there. I didn't know. So she sits up, and she's kind of whining a little bit, and her hair's standing up, and I don't really know what to think. So I get up on my knees, and I reach in my pocket, and I had my keys and a keychain there. And on my keychain, I had a little pen light that you have to screw closed to make the light come on, like, a $1 flashlight. And the battery was not very good in it, but it did make some light. So I get this thing working, and I'm shining around behind my camp, uphill from my camp, to see if I can see whatever it is. And Susha is still whining real quietly, and I hadn't really ever heard her do that like that, especially for a deer. And I'm wondering why she hasn't taken off to take care of this deer, if that's what it is. So I'm shining my light at about deer level to see what I can see, and something catches my eye, guys. And I raise my light up a few more feet, and from behind this big old growth fir tree, about 10 feet behind the uphill from the fire ring, I see one eye staring out at me from behind the tree, like a reddish yellow glow eyeball staring at me. And as I'm shining my light on it, my light is shining through the smoke of the fire to see this. So that's kind of distracting. And I can't make out what it is. All I know is there's an eyeball looking at me, and it's blinking. I see it blink a couple times. And being the brave son of a bitch that I am, or fool, I have to know what this is now. And Susha is standing up and whining pretty loudly, like she's hurt almost. I keep my light on this eyeball, and I step right over through the smoke, right over the top of the fire ring. I could have gone around it, but I go directly across the fire ring to see this, and it disappears behind the tree. So now I'm on the other side of the fire ring, and I have my hand out, and I've got my light shining up the tree where I saw this. And out from the other side of the tree, I see two eyeballs. I see whatever this is has two eyes, and they're looking at me from the same height as where I saw the other eye, on the left side of the tree. And then a second later, the second Bigfoot I've ever seen in my life steps out from behind this tree. And I'm trying to keep my composure. My dog, or my friend's dog, has taken off. It didn't bark or whine or anything. It just ran out of camp. It's gone. I was kind of hoping to grab her by the collar, and her and I would both check this thing out together. But it's gone, or she's gone. And I'm staring at this Bigfoot, and it's massive, and it's black as black. I can make out a little bit of facial features on this one, but not much. My light was just not bright enough to distinguish exactly what he looked like, except I could see his outline very well. Almost, it was just enough light to almost see a shimmer off the hair or its coat. And I'm doing this only for a couple seconds, and the next thing it does is it squats down with its ass practically on the ground like a catcher in a baseball game, to catch a baseball. And it's got both of his hands out on the ground, and he's just checking me out and kind of rocking back and forth a little bit. And I can see his big fingers and his big hand. They're massive arms and hands. And I'm just standing like with my light, like this is the 100th Bigfoot that I've seen. No problem. I'm just going to stand here and check you out. And I'm not proud of that. I'm not bragging about that, but that's what I did. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that I'd seen the one in 1979 and nothing bad happened. But I'm freaking out too inside. I'm like, holy crap. And this doesn't last long. He's down in the squatting position. Now he's about at my eye level. Even though he's squatting, he's still massive and big. And just as I'm thinking, okay, now what? It starts moving away from me down the hill. And I keep my light on it, on his eyes. Now it's getting farther away from me, and all I can see is the eye shine. But this guy kept his eyes on me the whole time he's moving down the hill. And it's going from a standing position all the way down to a squatting position. And I can see its eyes go, 7-8 feet high, and then almost all the way down to the ground. And after talking to my friend John about it, we're thinking that he might have been on all fours at some point too, and kind of spider crawling sideways away from me. And it went out of sight over the grade of the hill where I couldn't see it at all anymore. And that's when the fear factor hit me. I didn't know what was going to happen next, if it would come up from behind me or what. But I bailed from that fire ring where I was standing, and dove into my tent and covered my head up with a sleeping bag like a child, and was on my hands and knees, elbows and knees, breathing heavily, and just waiting like the next second it's going to come back here and grab my whole tent and just drag me away. And I was it was the most frightening thing I've ever experienced, ever. Absolutely.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Wherever Bud goes, his harmonica goes with him. It's a pocket full of soul. Now he's living with prostate cancer. He asked his doctor about Xtandi enzalutamide. Extandi 40 milligram tablets treats men with prostate cancer that has spread to other parts of the body and responds to a medical or surgical treatment to lower testosterone. Extandi may cause serious side effects: seizure, a brain condition called PRESS, allergic reactions, heart disease that can lead to death, falls and bone fractures, swallowing problems, or choking that can lead to death. Stop Extandi and get medical help at once if your face, tongue, lip, or throat start swelling. Tell your doctor at once if you faint, have a seizure, quickly worsening headache, decreased alertness, confusion, vision problems, chest pain or discomfort, or shortness of breath. Extandi can cause harm to an unborn baby or miscarriage. Use birth control during and 3 months after Extandi. Common side effects include muscle and joint pain, feeling unusually tired, hot flashes, constipation, less appetite, diarrhea, high blood pressure, bleeding, falls, fractures, and headache. Talk to your doctor and visit Extandi.com.
The most frightening thing I've ever experienced. And then oddly, I don't remember much after that except falling asleep. I fell asleep and woke up a couple hours later. It was real quiet. I didn't even zip my door of my tent closed. It was very quiet, and I was listening intently to see if I could hear anything. And what I did hear was Susha. She was outside my tent, kind of pacing back and forth, and I called her in. So I got her in my tent and zipped it closed and went to sleep. Not for long. Woke up right at first light. It's just so odd that I was able to sleep, you know? I mean, I'm still trying to wrap my head around how I was able to sleep that night. But I did. So I wake up at first light and go down to my fire pit. You know, I'm looking around and I'm not afraid now. It's light out. Got my fire going and put coffee on. As I'm getting the coffee ready, my friend Sean from the camp on the beach, he came up with his coffee cup to join me. And we shared a cup of coffee, and I told him exactly what I'd seen. He was a Bigfoot advocate, had never seen one, but he was a believer. He was like, holy crap, bro. You know, right on this island, you know? And so we're like, and I'm thinking, yeah, he had to swim out here. I don't think he took a boat, you know. We're kind of pondering that possibility, how it would have got to the island. During the winter, the reservoir is drawn down, and there's kind of a land bridge from the town of Detroit out to the island, but there's not enough food on that island to sustain a creature that size for that long. We're well in, first part of July now. So I'm guessing that it swam out there that day. Anyway, Sean and I looked around the camp a little bit, and the tree it was standing behind, and no trace of any footprints or anything. Again, the ground was not conducive for prints. A little later in the morning, there's a trail or an old abandoned fire road that goes to the top of Piety Knob. And I went up there by myself and just to check out the area a little bit. And I got to the top of this knob, and there's an old abandoned slash pile up on top of Piety with a massive amount of timber in this thing from a clear cut or fire control. I'm not sure, but it had some big dark holes in it, and I got a very strange feeling standing there. I didn't even want to investigate any further, so I kind of jogged back to camp. And my friend Sean had another friend I didn't know well, but had joined us that year with his wife and 2 kids. And Sean and I both, I told him what had happened. And after he heard what I'd seen, he decided he didn't want to stay anymore. Him and his wife and kids packed up and left that day. And that was the day of the fireworks that they have on the lake, and that's why they'd come. So he told us he did not feel safe being on the island any longer, that when he was younger, a scout camp that he attended was called off a couple days in because the scoutmaster had seen a Bigfoot. And it was not far from where we were up the road at Marion Forks. So he pulled stakes on the scoutmaster pulled stakes on this camp and made everybody go home early because of what he'd seen. And he remembered that well, being very frightened of, maybe unjustly. But yeah, they packed up and put everything in their boat and took off. I don't remember really. Again, on the 3rd of July, there's a hell of a fireworks show on that lake. And I think I remember thinking, if there is still a Bigfoot on this island, I bet he's swimming for, some kind of solitude by now after seeing that, because it's quite a show, over an hour long, and, lots of loud explosions. And so that was my closest encounter. And like I said, absolutely terrifying. I'm glad I didn't try to run. I don't know what would have happened then, but I wasn't harmed. And again, it hasn't changed the way I feel about going into the woods, not one bit.
They watch fireworks. They do. They do. If they can see them, they're watching them. I mean, they're probably amazed by what the heck fireworks are.
I don't really think they're afraid of anything.
Probably not.
I remember hearing a story about some crabbers up in Alaska, anchored in a cove, eating their sandwich halfway through their day one day, and they said they witnessed a 1,000-pound grizzly come out onto the beach, walking backwards with its face to the forest, on its feet, on two legs. And they didn't even pay any attention to them, and they were anchored pretty close to shore. And soon after the bear comes out on the beach, here comes this 10, 12-foot Sasquatch right behind this bear and growled at it or yelled at it, and the bear hit all fours and ran the length of the beach and back into the woods. And the Bigfoot turned around and went back into the woods. A very brief encounter, but you can imagine what those guys went through witnessing that. They aren't afraid of anything. They really, why would they be?
I think the Sasquatch would take a bear any day, a grizzly bear.
Yeah.
A good size one, anyway.
Yeah.
Well, Joey, thanks for being on the show with us tonight, man. We appreciate it a ton, brother.
Yeah, those were great. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a pleasure and an honor to share those with you guys. Appreciate your time.
Wow, the honor is ours. Thank you.
All right, guys.
Get out and see anything else, you let us know, man. Keep in touch, all right?
Yeah. Stay safe.
Good night.
Crazy encounters Joey's had over there in Oregon.
Yeah, man. He's, I don't know if you call it lucky or, wow. Yeah, those are good.
We'll have to get him back on sometime if he runs into anything else and sees something, because it sounds like if he's still getting out and about, he might.
Yeah, he's in Oregon, so you never know.
Anyway, brother, it was awesome hanging out with you again, as always.
Always fun, brother. Always learning.
All right, I will see you on the next episode.
Yep. See ya.
You're listening to the Cryptid Creature Show. If you're a fan of the show, go and check out our new Patreon site. You'll get access to our private Discord server, exclusive merchandise, access to all live streams and Q&As, discounts on merch from the Cryptid Creature store, and get a chance to be a guest host during one of the show's recordings. Just go to patreon.com/Cryptid Creatures. Thank you for listening and supporting the show.